Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm going to be creating some Christmas in July thrift flips using Redesign's new release. For my first project, I'm going to be working on this little suitcase that I thrifted. It actually came in a set of 3. I'm going to begin by using some masking tape to hold the handle up. It does tend to fall down if it's not held. I'm also going to add some around the metal attachments just to keep things a little bit tidier. Once I finished adding the masking tape, I took out Couture's 2-in-1 primer in grey. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this over the entire outside. The surface of this suitcase had a shiny sealer on it, so I was worried about my paint sticking, and also I wanted to make sure that those polka dots weren't going to peek through. Now I knew that for most of this project around the outside that I was going to be using a dark colour, so grey was the best choice here. I knew I was going to be doing a light color on the front, but I just thought let's just keep it all that same gray primer and make sure that none of those polka dots show through. So as I said, I did 2 coats of the grey primer working in sections, and I let my primer dry for several hours before moving on. Once my primer was completely dry, I took out Couture's Evergreen chalk paint. I'm going to be applying this on the entire suitcase except for the front section that drops down. So I ended up doing 2 coats of this. This is a lovely deep forest green. It is perfect for Christmas crafts. It has great coverage, and because it is a chalk paint, I found that it stuck really well to my primed surface. You'll notice that I have not applied the primer to the inside. The inside didn't have the same coating, and it also didn't have the polka dots, so I didn't feel the need to add that there. So here you can see I'm going in and I'm applying the green to the bottom of the suitcase. And then when that was dry, I took out Couture's Italian Ivory mineral paint. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this on the front cover, or the front flap of the suitcase. Italian Ivory is a beautiful cream tone, and the mineral paint has a built-in sealer as well. After I finished doing the top, I then went around and did the sides of that top lid as well. When that was dry, I started adding that same Evergreen chalk paint to the inside of the suitcase as well. I definitely wanted this to feel like a complete project. I thought the green looked great on the outside, so it would be great on the inside. I think this project would be a great gift. You could definitely fill it with some lovely gifts, and the suitcase itself would be a great Christmas ornament holder, I think. Once I'd finished painting the inside of the suitcase and it was dry, I took out Redesign's new Village of Wonder transfer. This is a 4-page MIDI transfer, and it has beautiful Christmas village scenes. It also has some lovely lanterns and pine cones and greenery. There is so much to choose from in this beautiful transfer, and I was looking for a design that would be a great scale to fill the front of the suitcase, and I ended up deciding on this lovely scene here of 4 houses. So I'm going to go in and trim that out. Obviously going to trim off those couple of trees that are near the top there, save those for later. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to peel the backing off and I'm going to position it on the front, and I'm going to make sure that there's a little bit of a gap down the bottom and up the top. Once I have the transfer positioned where I want it, I'm then going to start rubbing over the entire transfer. There is a little bit of tackiness, so it will hold the transfer in place. And then I'm going to pick up a corner or a side, and I'm going to start lifting that plastic as I'm rubbing. Now, Redesign Transfers go on a sealed surface the easiest, so that's why I was happy to use the Italian Ivory. It has that built-in sealer, and of course I did actually give my paint 24 hours to dry before I tried to attach this transfer. Once I finished burnishing the transfer, I then had a look at what I could possibly put on the top green section of the suitcase, and I really liked the greenery here, so I ended up cutting off those pieces. They are very similar, and then I also liked this pine cone, but I decided I would seal it with Paint Couture's Extreme Guardian Satin first, that I would seal my paint. So I'm going to go in and seal my transfer on the front. This is going to protect that beautiful transfer, because I will be layering in some other products over the top of that. So I want to make sure that that's all nice and sealed and protected. But I'm also going to go in and seal my chalk paint, because as I said previously, Redesign Transfers go on sealed surfaces a lot easier than unsealed. And the chalk paint doesn't have a built-in sealer, so I need to make sure that I have that all sealed in and protected. After a few hours of dry time, I went in and started adding in those transfers that I've already cut out. So I'm just going to position those festive branches there behind the handle, and I'm going to pick up a section of the transfer and start rubbing. It definitely goes on a lot easier if your paint is sealed, and I am just working in sections. I wasn't too worried about the halo around the outside, because once you burnish it a little bit and also then go in with a sealer, you will find that the halo around the transfers does pretty much disappear on those darker paint colors, but you definitely need to seal them. So as you can see, I'm just continuing to add those transfers in, add them down, and I just think this is just a really nice touch on that top section of suitcase. Once I had my transfers down, I sealed them with Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in satin. When that was dry, I also then opened up my suitcase and sealed the Evergreen paint that was on the inside as well. When the sealer was dry, I went in and started removing the masking tape that I had around the handles and those little latch attachments. And then I took out Paint Couture's Crust Medium and also Simply White chalk paint. I have tinted my Crust Medium, and now I'm applying it with a palette knife to the roof sections, the beautiful snowy roof sections on the transfers there. I wanted to bring a 3D element in, so I'm applying it with my palette knife, sort of scraping it on, but then I am going to be going back in and sort of dabbing at the product. This creates little peaks, and it definitely gives a bit more of a realistic look to make it look more like snow. And I'm just going to continue to add that Crust Medium anywhere that I can see that snow, starting with the roof. Now, because I have these transfers sealed, I can go in, as you saw me do briefly before, with a wet wipe, and I can wipe it back from any areas that perhaps I feel that I've got a little bit too much of. And then I decided to also add some of that faux snow down the bottom as well. And before that had a chance to dry, I took out Paint Couture's Sheer Frost German Glass Glitter. I'm going to sprinkle that over the top of my wet Crust Medium. This is going to stick into that Crust Medium, and it's going to give our snow a lovely shimmering effect. I went with the Sheer Frost because it does remind me of snow and it's a bit more of a subtle look, but at this point you could definitely come in with any kind of glitter that you have on hand that you think would enhance your project. I let the Crust Medium dry completely, and then I took out my hot glue gun. I'm going to add a little bit of glue in the section where the handles meet the attachment on the suitcase. The handle does not stay upright, and I really wanted it to, so adding this little bit of glue there is going to allow the handle to stay upright. I then decided that I wanted to add a ribbon. I love buffalo check. It feels very Farmhouse Christmas, so I ended up tying just a simple bow here. And once I'm happy with how that looks, I am going to have a look at the bow tails, figure out how long I want them to be, and then cut it to size. And then I am going to be going in and using some twine. I'm just going to thread it through the back of the bow and use that to attach it to the handle that we have on the top there. So I'm just going to tie that in a double knot. And then once I have that nice and secure, I'm going to trim off the ends of the twine. And because this ribbon has wire in it, I'm able to bend it and manipulate it until I have it looking the way that I want. And then finally, I'm going to attach this little branch here. It's got a little pine cone, some little bells, and I think it finishes it off nicely. And here's a look at our finished festive suitcase. I think this turned out really sweet. The new Village of Wonder transfer is absolutely stunning. I think this would be a great gift and also a great way to store your Christmas decorations. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my second project, I'm going to be working on this hardcover book that I thrifted for just $1. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Farmhouse linen, and I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this on the front cover. The main reason I am applying this is that I am going to be adding some decoupage paper over the top, and I want to have a nice plain white background so that the decoupage paper can show to its best advantage. You can also use Prima for this step. I find I don't have any issues really with chalk paint when it comes to adding that to book covers. I then took out Redesign's new Christmas Blessings fibre paper. This is the Cardinal design from that pack. And here I'm just working out exactly how much is going to actually fit on my cover. And as I was looking at this, I realized that it wasn't going to quite work out the way that I wanted. So I decided to cut it out. Otherwise, part of the Cardinal on the left would end up on the book spine. And I thought that would just look a little bit odd. So I've cut that out. And here I'm just working out how it's going to look on the back cover once I have it repositioned. And then I took out Redesigns Decoupage Gel Matte Medium, and I'm going to lay down a generous coat on the front cover of my hardcover book. I've got that dry Farmhouse linen down, so my decoupage paper is going to stand out really nicely. And then I'm going to position the decoupage fibre paper into that medium, and once I'm happy with how it's positioned, I'm going to press it down, really working it into the spine of the book there and smoothing that out. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go in and lay another layer of that decoupage gel medium over the top. So this is a really sticky product, but it adheres really well. So your paper's not going to move and it's going to be stuck down really well. So you can see I'm really focusing on the spine, and then I'm going in and adding another coat over the top of the entire front cover. I dried the front cover with a hairdryer and then I flipped it over, and I'm going to be repeating the same process, laying down a nice generous coat of that decoupage gel and then positioning the other Cardinal on the back cover there. So just lining it up and then smoothing it down. I do have a plastic sheet down underneath my book so that I don't accidentally get any dried paint or anything like that on the front cover. So I'm just going to apply another coat over the top, making sure that that is all sealed in really well. Once the back cover was dry, I then went in and trimmed off the excess paper from the sides. I knew that I was going to have to figure out something for the spine of the book, because remember we did cut that paper in half so that we could better position the 2 cardinals. So I am keeping this in mind as I am trimming off that excess fibre paper from around the outside. So I'm just making sure that I don't cut off too much or too little there. I want to make sure I've got enough to work with. So I'm going to then position the book, and here I'm just working out how I could arrange it. I'm then going to lay down some more of that product on the spine of the book, and then I'm going to position the paper on the spine. And as you can see, the colors go quite nicely. I feel like it blended in pretty well with the front scene. So I'm just positioning that, making sure it's all lining up the way that I want it to, smoothing it out. And then I'm going to go in and trim off the excess from the left-hand side, making sure I don't cut it too short. And then once I have that cut the way that I want, I'm going to be going in with some more of that product over the top and also on the sides, just really making sure that everything is stuck down really well. I then moved on to the top section. I'm going to be applying some more of that decoupage gel up the top and then laying that other piece of fibre paper to finish off that seam. And then I'm going to smooth that down a little bit, making sure I've got that position the way that I want. And then I'm going to trim off the excess from the top. Once the spine of the book was dry, I then moved on to adding little cuts on the corner sections of the book cover there. So I'm just thinking about how to cover a book. So if you think back to when we were at school and we had to cover our books, it's very, very similar. So just making some little diagonal cuts there so that I'll be able to fold the paper in, and also on the near the spine of the book as well. And then I took out my hot glue gun. I'm using hot glue so that I have that immediate quick hold, and I'm folding up the bottom section there up into that glue. I am using a low temp hot glue gun. Definitely be careful when you are working with a hot glue gun. I've got lots of burns from doing craft. And then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to add some more glue on the edge there and fold that in. And then I'm also thinking about the spine of the book there. I've got another little extra bit there I have to glue down, and then I'm going to add some on that longer section as well. So just repeating the same process on the other side as well to cover this book. And this is a craft that you can do on a journal. It would be a really great way to personalize a journal for someone. It would be a lovely gift, or even to update your own books at home that you have. Maybe you've got a cover that's looking a little bit tired of a book that you love. And the beauty of it is it doesn't impact the book itself. I'm also going to add some glue on the top sections near the spine as well. Next, I took out this little dollar store Merry Christmas stencil that I had in my stash. Any kind of Merry Christmas stencil would do for this step. I really wanted to put Merry Christmas up the top so that it looked more like a book, like it was the title of a book. And then I took out Paint Couture's Arabian Gold stencil paste. I'm going to be using a palette knife to run that stencil paste over the top. This is going to give us a lovely raised metallic finish. It's going to be lovely and shiny, and as I said, it's going to be raised, so it's going to pretty much look embossed, which I think adds to the realism that this is a book. So as you can see, I'm just working my way across, applying that stencil medium over the top there, and then gently pulling it back. When that was dry, I took out this other little stencil that I have. There was lots of little circles and snowflakes. I'm just going over the top of some of the smaller circles just to have that in the background. I really liked the look of this. It actually was a mistake that I discovered that I liked this. I got a little drop of the stencil medium in the background, and I thought that it looked really nice and that it would complement the snow that's falling in the decoupage image and tie it together with that Merry Christmas text. So I just continued to go in and add those little circles. Any kind of stencil would work for this. You could definitely do some really lovely little snowflakes for something like this. Anywhere that I get it that I don't want it, you can see I'm using a wet wipe, or maybe I didn't quite like how one of them turned out. I can use a wet wipe to pull that back because we do have that decoupage gel there that has sealed the paper. And I am, of course, going to repeat the same process, adding those little circles on the back. And then I took out this other stencil. I'm going to just be adding some little lines on the spine of the book. I'm just using this stencil that I had in my stash and applying that. Just reminded me of what you see on some of those old gilded books. So I'm just applying that over the top there, and then I'm going to carefully remove the stencil. And in some areas I did get more stencil paste than I wanted, but again, I can use a wet wipe to go in and wipe that back and fix any of the areas that I'm not happy with. I let that dry, and then I moved on and repeated the same process another 3 times so that I had 4 lots of this line detail down the spine. And again, I did have to use that wet wipe a few times. I did get a little bit of bleed through here and there. If you don't have a stencil like this, masking tape could definitely work as well. Once I finished on the spine of the book, as I said before, I did end up repeating that same process of adding those little gold dots in the background of the fibre paper. And here's a look at our finished Cardinal Christmas book. I love how this turned out. I think that this would look lovely on a coffee table or on a beautiful Christmas display. It would also make a great gift. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my final project, I'm going to be working on this little plastic frame that I thrifted for just 50 cents. I'm going to begin by removing the backing, and I also gave the frame a coat of my White Night gloss clear coat to help my paint stick. I already loved the color, but I wanted to freshen it up, so I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Bronze Lux Metallic over the top. It already had a bit of a bronze look to it, but it did still look plastic to me, and I thought that by adding this it would make it look more like metal. So I'm just going to go in, and I only applied one coat over the top of that existing color, and then I let that dry completely. I love bronze, but obviously if this wasn't to your taste, at this point you could come in with any kind of metallic that would suit your style. I then took the backing of the frame, and I'm using that as a guide to trace around on some art paper. I'm then going to cut that out, and then I'm going to take out Redesign's new Yuletide Transfer. This is filled with some beautiful classic Christmas scenes. We've got Santa, some lovely houses, and some deer, presents and Christmas trees. I am going to be using this beautiful deer design. It's just a little bit bigger than the room that I have that I can work with, but I am going to just position my paper to give me a bit of a rough idea of how much is actually going to fit. I'm just going to go in and trim off the excess from the sides, and then I'm also going to trim off the excess from the top and bottom as well. I then peeled the backing off the back of the transfer, and I'm going to position that over the top of my art paper. Then I'm going to pick up a corner of that plastic and start rubbing. I found that this went on quite easily onto my art paper. I just worked in sections rubbing at that design, and then I burnished it. I then went in and cleaned up the glass. It was quite dirty, so I want to make sure that that's nice and clean so that we can see that beautiful deer image. I used a paper towel to dry it off, and then I'm going to reposition that into the frame. And then I'm going to be positioning my little artwork. I noticed some of the transfer was overlapping a bit, so I'm just going to go in and fold that over, make sure that's all down and secure. I don't need to seal this because it is going to be behind glass. I'm then going to be slipping that into the frame and then replacing the backing. And here's a look at our third finished project. This was a quick and easy flip. I think it turned out really sweet. I think it would look great even sitting in a Christmas tree. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video and that it's given you some ideas on how you can use Redesign's beautiful new Whispers of Winter release. Let me know if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find a full product list and my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks for watching.